Hey everybody, welcome to Obscurities and Miniatures. We've got a fun looking model waiting for us today. Well, maybe not little, it is a Conquest model. But today, we're going to take a look at the mounted Strategos for the Old Dominion faction in Parabellum Games Conquest. The Last Argument of Kings. So, usually, undead stuff is not my go-to faction. If you aren't familiar enough with the things that I prefer, I would say lizard men are probably my top choice, followed by large ogreish-sized things, depending on what setting and what era your game is taking place in. I like big, low count, high cost models and scaly stuff. But this model in particular, I thought just looked really dynamic. I like the fact, he's got that kind of death mask, face mask, and the glowing eyes of the undead underneath. He's got the lion cape. He's got the real heavy, I can't think of the cataphract style, barding on his horse there, even though it's completely skeletal underneath all that. So I thought that was kind of cool. And being your base is coming out. Being a Conquest model, cavalry model no less, it's going to be a big one. So I'm looking forward to that. And the coloring, whoever painted this thing, really top-notch job. I thought that just really fun, vibrant, interesting colors. And like I said, the undead stuff isn't my go-to faction of choice usually, but it's not like I haven't been painting a bunch of them anyways for Conquest or in general. So, take what you can get. You'll notice right away this is a plastic kit. While there have been quite a few resin models for the Old Dominion and Conquest in general, there has been a slight move away from that, I guess, to more viable unit choices that are going to be, played fairly often as plastic choices as well. See his evilish undead face under there in his full-on Legionnaire armor. As is the case with almost all the plastic kits, voila, we've got our instructions there. Again, I really like just the bulk of... He's dead, but he's got a real hefty bulk to him, I feel like, which is really cool. I like that. I like thick, bulky models, both for ease of playing, ease of painting, and just, they've got a good heft to them. You can see here, just the size of the horse in my palm. It's going to be a big one. And that's good. I like that. Easier to paint. With our witch hunter friend as always. So the main body of his mount looks to be two pieces. And we see the head, remains of the head at least, as well as chunks of our rider. And as of right now, at least filming this model, I haven't built a Strategos on foot yet. I'm not going to rule that out. He did look kind of cool, but it's just... there's always a bajillion choices of things that I want to build and paint and work on, and I never get to any of them. So, we'll see. Sooner or later, it's possible. It's funny all these years later, the game's been around for a while now. It's got a couple years under its belt, and I'm still hearing people complain about, oh, the starter set was such poor quality, blah, blah, blah. You know what? I think they have really upped the game in terms of sculpts, the sharpness. I never had an issue with the plastics to begin with. I've, had just as much issue with other major companies and their quality of plastic, so I don't think that that's a fair assessment to knock Parabellum for exactly. I know some people have complained the quality of their sets. It could be hit and miss. I don't know. But that's not bad. For a character kit, to me, I don't mind paying that character tax if I'm going to get enough parts to really work with. Like some of the latest Forge World stuff that I built from Necromunda, for example. Not like I'm going to talk, it has nothing to do with it, but the amount of bits that go into the building of the kit made me feel like I got my money's worth, you know what I mean? So the fact that, I can't remember what this guy was called. The Hierodeacon or something like that. It's another of the Old Dominion character models. But literally, he was like, glue the two halves together and his hands and his head, and that was it. It's a nice model, but I didn't feel like the value in terms of the building was there for me. Whereas I feel like this, I'm going to get my satisfaction and my money's worth in terms of all the goodies to put together. And that's always the case, I feel like, with mounted cavalry guys anyways. So I'm going to stop rambling. We've seen all the parts there. Let's get them put together. Let's see how it turns out. Yoink! Sit tight. All right, time for our mounted Strategos to gallop on to the table. And I don't know what's going on there with the settings of the camera, but it's okay. So you can see here, I mean, from a 3D perspective, I like the sense of motion. I like that sense of dynamicism. You know, he's really getting ready for action. Horsey's head is turned. He's got the reins there. You can see what remains of his face underneath his death mask there. Got a good sense of movement on that cape. And I mean, admittedly, it's not super exciting to look at in plain gray plastic, but I think given a nice paint job, he's going to look really cool. And I mean, he may not be as impressive in terms of just size and craziness as something like the Avatara of the Spires, but then again, not everything can be. I mean, these models are just all kinds of crazy. And I think if you ever wanted to use them for Varangard or, you know, anything outside of Conquest, they are very great Chaos type cavalry. And a lot cheaper than the GW stuff too, just saying. But yeah, I really like this guy. I like the fact that despite having only 2 of his hooves on the ground, I think once there's some rubble and assorted sandy basing stuff on that base, I think he's going to have enough of a stable setting there. So that's always good. I'm not a fan of cavalry where you only have 1 foot on the base. I did not attach him to the mount yet, but then again, that is something I am always guilty of when it comes to cavalry. I don't remember the actual unmounted Strategos having this sort of helm. I feel like that was the guy with the lion head. I can't remember. I know they have the guy with the profane... what is it called? I want to say profane reliquary, but I don't think that's the right vocabulary word for the big major standard bearer type guy. I gotta say, the Old Dominion models have really gotten a nice set of character models. Almost more so than my favored Wadroon, the orc-like faction of Conquest, of which I've painted quite a few. Then again, these guys are mostly in resin still. We'll see if they get any plastic releases. So overall, I'm pretty pleased with how he's turned out. I mean, again, he's just pretty much gray plastic at the moment, but going by the painting on the box, just the quality of the sculpt, the quality of the pose, I think it's going to really turn out to be a great looking model. And, you know, with the style of armor he's wearing, who's to say he couldn't end up in a million other different fantasy undead armies in various tabletop games, because I know I am going to be absolutely guilty of doing just that. Grabbing some of his painted buddies here. I think just the colors, the variety, the pageantry of these guys of the Old Dominion, I think it's really cool. They are very ornate, and I don't think our mounted Strategos is going to look very out of place either. I'm going to have to really, you know, spice and spruce him up in terms of painted details. So do keep an eye on this channel. We'll see how he turns out. I'm sure it won't look anywhere near as nice as the box art. It never does, but I will give it that old college try. If you haven't had a chance to check out the actual rules for Conquest, if you're curious about how it plays, either in big, giant, mass battle, rank and file mode, or my preferred, you know, up close and personal skirmish version, both those rules are available on the website. You can take a look at that, as well as all the background lore, the model building guides, and all sorts of other fun bits of info on Parabellum's website itself. So do have a look at that if you haven't had a chance to. With that said, though, this has been High Lord Tamberlane with Obscurities and Miniatures, saying thanks for watching, and we will see you back here soon. Bye-bye.